But I was asked by the organizers of the present-day conference to sort of summarize a longish book that I published last year, and which happens to be the last part of a trilogy, let's say, on the development of the humanistic idea, on the, as the English has it, longue durée story of the way in which man has conceived of him or herself in his or her relationship to the cosmos, to the divine, and, well, to him or herself. And, well, since this book has hardly anything to do directly with the idea of liberty, but more with the idea of a metaphysical freedom, not liberty as a political notion, but freedom as something which characterizes man such as he or she understands and experiences him or herself. Well, I will deal in the present short presentation with the idea of humanism. Humanism, i.e., the project of a total autonomy of mankind, of what is human, man being allegedly able to define him or herself as such, as man, as being able to tell what really is human and what is not, how the human can distinguish itself from the non-human. And, well, I will simply sketch, first of all, the development and rise of the humanistic idea. And, well, since after each rise, and this is what Edward Gibbon taught us, there is a fall, I will, well, briefly, far more briefly, sketch the demise of this humanistic project, and finally ask the question, well, what are we to do if we want to face this dire reality? And, well, the humanistic idea is at present feeling the flack. In former times, the question asked was, how can we promote humanism? How can we mankind more human and all these kind of things? And, well, I'm afraid that today the question has shifted to another, perhaps deeper level, i.e., should we defend humanism? Well, if I could adapt a well-known utterance of the German philosopher Schopenhauer about morals, I would say, preaching humanism is an easy task. Giving reasons for it is a trickier business. It is still easy for us to attack the enemies of humanism, be the danger real or a sheer scarecrow. I will quote a sentence from a book by an Englishman, a social philosopher by the name of John N. Gray, not the John Gray who made a pot of money with his drivel about Venus and Mars, but a more serious gentleman. And, well, the sentence doesn't deal directly with the idea of humanism as such, but with a project of the Enlightenment, which has a great deal to do with humanism. And he writes the following sentence: in the late modern, quote, in the late modern period in which we live, the Enlightenment project is affirmed chiefly for fear of the consequences of abandoning it. Ours are Enlightenment cultures not from conviction, but by default. And, well, I should say perhaps about the idea of humanism that we are not exactly humanists any longer. We are what I should call, in an ugly phrase, anti-humanists. We oppose anti-humanism, but we are hard put to it if asked to give reasons in favor of humanism, in favor of the human. Well, let me first, as I promised, sketch as briefly as possible the development of the humanistic project. I will distinguish 4 steps, and they follow each other in the chronological order at a pace that quickens. Well, the first step is the idea according to which man is a being that possesses some properties that distinguish him or her essentially from other beings. This is a totally value-free definition of the human. Man is different. Man is different. He might be the best thing among sublunar beings, to take up the old antique and medieval distinction between what lies below the sphere of the moon and what lies above. According to Aristotle, man is the best among all living beings, but far from being the best thing, as the English idiom has it, tout court. There are many other things in the world, including heavenly bodies, that are godlier than man. And for this reason, when the ancient philosophers from Plato to Plotinus tell us that man is different, they don't mean exactly that man is a big screaming deal. Man is simply, well, interesting, well, because we happen to be this kind of species, and that's it. That's the first step. In a second step, man appears as better. The dimension of value comes onto the stage. Man is not only different, but this difference is a higher value, a greater dignity, or words to that effect. The theme has a biblical origin, the theme about the dignity of man. Let's think, for instance, of Saint Leo the Great's Christmas homilies. Man should remember his or her own dignity. And the theme was dealt with extensively and systematically in a whole literary genre that flourished from the 15th century onwards. The first who wrote a treatise on human dignity was the Italian, well, humanist with quotation marks. I will explain why the quotation marks later on. The Italian humanist Giannozzo Manetti, who wrote his treatise on the nobility and dignity of man at an ominous date of 1453. Mere chance, but the downfall of Constantinople and the rise of human dignity happened at the same point of time. And well, in the second step too, the dignity of man is balanced by a consciousness of man's lowliness, of man's low origin. We have a whole treatise of tradition of treatises on the dignity of man, and on the other hand, a whole tradition of treatises on the humility, on the baseness of man, born into a material world made out of an impure drop of seed and all these kind of themes. Beg your pardon. And into the bargain, the greatness of man is the result of a gift. Well, for instance, in a Christian outlook, the gift of grace. Man was lifted from his or her lowly condition and from his condition of a fallen creature by the grace of God. Well, this dignity is not something that we human beings could plume ourselves with. That's something we received. That's the second step. A third step begins in the early 17th century, well, mainly in this country. I'm alluding to the way in which the Lord Chancellor Francis Bacon launched a project of domination. Man is not only better than the other beings, but he has to submit the other beings. His domination is not metaphorical in nature any longer. When you say he or she is head and shoulders above the lot, this doesn't mean that he or she lords it over the lot. That's some sort of, well, ontological, sorry for the word of art, superiority. But with this third step, there is the project of reducing the other beings to the lower state of slaves. The formula of my fellow countryman René Descartes, man will be endowed thanks to the new method he is trying to bring about. Man will be lifted to the status of master and possessor of nature. Master and possessor, this is exactly what the slave owner is vis-a-vis his or her slaves. Nature has to be enslaved. For which reason? Inside of this third step, we could distinguish two tiers, two different levels. The first one would be Francis Bacon's enterprise of, dominating nature in order that man should be able to live a more comfortable life. It's, commodious to be the master. The second sub-step in the third step about conquering nature is German in origin. This is Fichte's idea according to which we should dominate nature because this is a moral duty for us to assert our moral superiority. What is at stake is not, living a comfortable life any longer, but being on a level rung on the ladder of morality. We are better in the plainest meaning of the adjective. We are better because we are more virtuous, because we have a stronger sense of duty and things, and all these kind of things. A fourth step, this was the third step with those two different shades of meaning. The fourth one should be called, and was called by better people than I am, exclusive humanism. Man is the highest being simply, the highest being full stop. Man is a being that does not tolerate any other being above itself. This is the way in which the young Karl Marx, who had just taken his degree as a doctor, as a Herr Doctor, writes at the end of his doctoral dissertation, the credo of Prometheus, he quotes from Aeschylus in a word, I hate each and every god, put into the mouth of Prometheus, who is, nailed on his rock with the eagle eating his liver. And, the credo of Prometheus is the credo of philosophy, is its own battle cry against all heavenly and earthly gods that do not acknowledge human consciousness as the supreme Godhead. There shouldn't be any other Godhead before it. The allusion to Exodus, to the Decalogue, is clear. Thou shalt not have any other God. I don't remember how the King James has it in front of me or something like that. The idea was taken up unconsciously, and this was in the zeitgeist, by Auguste Comte, who called mankind the supreme being, or the highest being. And what is interesting for the historian of ideas, and I'm a historian of ideas of sorts, is that this strong version of humanism, this exclusive version of humanism, was the intellectual context in which the very word humanism was coined, which happened in the 40s of the 19th century, 1840 exactly, probably in Germany under the pen of a now almost totally forgotten fellow by the name of Arnold Ruge. Interestingly, the word had right from the outset both meanings. The meaning of the humanistic project, no being is higher than man, and on the other hand, as a category of historiography in order to describe what happened in, well, say, Italy of the 15th century, when the classical heritage was rediscovered, brought over from Constantinople and other places. That's what historians call right now the humanistic movement. And both movements, were could sort of interfere. And, the very historiographical category received its color from the project of an exclusive humanism. Italian people of the 15th century who were devout Christians were interpreted by historians of the 19th century as forerunners of the atheistic movement. In England, the word humanism began its career as a polite substitute, as a polite proxy for atheism. In Victorian England, atheism was hardly the thing. And this is the reason why people had to find other words in order to convey very much the same idea, but in a, let's say, watered-down form. Humanism, agnosticism, secularism began their career at this point of time. Well, to sum up, we have 4 steps. 4 steps. Man is different. Man is better. Man has to be the boss. And man is the only supreme being. Man is something like God. And now it so happens that those three of those steps were climbed down. And this happened far more quickly than the slow ascent towards divinization of man. First, man is not allowed any longer to exploit the rest of the living world, and thereby to endanger the survival of other living beings. Well, I'm alluding, to be sure, to some aspects, to the most sober aspects of the ecological movement, pleading for prudence, thrift, and things. Well, there are quite good aspects that I could condone wholeheartedly. There's a second step. The first step corresponds to the project of the conquest of nature, and it says, no, you should not do that. The second step corresponds to the affirmation of a moral, of an axiological superiority of man over the rest of the living beings. And we listen to people who tell us, and that's the more radical version, the deeper version of ecology, man is worse than other beings, worse than parasites, worse than big game, worse than birds of prey, because it's more dangerous. He or she is more dangerous for the environment that they are. mankind is a menace for every other living species, and so on and so forth. We have been dreaming for ages of a world that would be redeemed from the presence of mankind. And this is a, sensibility that is older than the deep ecology movement to which I've just been alluding. I found in a youthful work of Flaubert, the great French novelist, some sentences in 1838, 2 years before the word humanism and the humanistic project were coined and launched, in which he says, trees, in a world without mankind, trees will grow and sprout without any hand that breaks and plucks. The rivers will flow through meadows studded with flowers. Nature will be free without men who enslave her. This race will be blotted out, since it was cursed since its infancy. Okay, mankind is an unpleasantness for the rest of nature. Mankind should be wiped out. And I found the same kind of things under the pen of D.H. Lawrence. There is this painter in Women in Love, if my memory serves me right, in which he says, we should do away with mankind so that nature can produce new things that will be far more beautiful, for which onlooker the question is not asked. Anyway, this was the second step downwards, i.e. man is not better, but on the contrary worse. And the third step is man corresponds to the very first step in the ascent, i.e. man was supposed to be different, and some scientists tell us that he is not that different. Other living beings have some sort of language. Other living beings have some sort of morality. And we are said, for instance, that man shares, 95 or 97% of his DNA with higher apes. Well, the argument is not especially cogent, since I could say, I share 90% of my vocabulary with Shakespeare. But, one of us is the better writer. Okay, anyway, what is interesting is the rise of some sort of anti-humanism. And the word was coined, by the way, I recently discovered, had been mistaken. I thought the first one who had coined the word anti-humanism was the Russian poet Alexander Blok, right after the First World War. But in fact, I recently found the word in Max Scheler, in the German phenomenologist philosopher Max Scheler, as early as 1912. Okay, let's say in the early 20th century, some sort of anti-humanistic consciousness is on the rise. Well, I will skip things precisely on Bloch and on your great friend Roger Michel Foucault to give just a bit of thought. How long have I been boring the pants of you? 5 minutes, okay. Perhaps 2 points. First, in the former outlook, i.e. before the rise of this modern humanistic project, the project of exclusive humanism, man was valued, but at the same time, one was considered as having a dignity, having a nobility of sorts, but on the other hand, he would receive this dignity from somewhere else. From nature, with a capital N, or from God, who, of course, has a capital G. Just to give you a simple quotation by Aristotle. there is this always recurrent formula, man begets man. And there is one passage in the physics in which he adds a capital rider, man begets man with the help of the sun. With the help of the sun. And the sun is here a metonymy for the whole of the natural world. Man is him or herself because he is part of nature. Christians would say nature is the creation of a benevolent God. And if we do away with this benevolent God whose plenipotentiary man is, man possesses sovereignty, not as something lended that has to be given back, but as the irretrievable gift of a generous God, of a God who ignores envy, as Plato's Timaeus has it already. Well, if we do away with the divine will come back under quite an unpleasant form. And we have been witnessing the rise of a host of new gods since the 18th, 19th century. And there were the gods of the French Revolution. There were the new god of Auguste Comte, this god which is mankind itself. And we have finally, already under the pen of Auguste Comte, this strange divinization of the earth. At the very end of his intellectual career, when he has already gone a little bananas, he would add to his supreme being, i.e. mankind, what he called, and the phrase is stupendous, the great fetish. The great fetish. And the great fetish is the earth. It's all the more interesting that according to Comte's own theory of religion, fetishism is the most elementary, the most basic kind of religiosity. Well, what is common to all those new gods, be they the earth, be they the nation, be they the class, be they the race, and so on and so forth, is that they want human sacrifice. They are thirsty, according to the title of a novel by Anatole France, this popular novelist of the late 19th and early 20th century. The gods are thirsty. That's the title of a novel about, the French Revolution, in which a failed painter sends to the guillotine, a great deal of poor people who, and without any pangs of consciousness. And we know that failed painters, can be dangerous, and failed calligraphers too. Okay. As a conclusion, perhaps we'll have to be far more pessimistic than Father Henri de Lubac, my fellow countryman, who said at the end of his drama of atheistic humanism that man without God can organize the earth, but will organize in the last resort against man. I should be far more pessimistic and say that exclusive humanism is not only morally bad, but simply impossible. If it were left to its inner logic, it would destroy itself in the long run. And the reason is a simple one. It is unable to answer a fundamental question. The question about the fulcrum, the Archimedean point. How can we say that it is good that there should be men, there should be human beings on this earth? We can explain how we can organize our common life, well, in the most peaceful way possible. We can do that in principle. In principle, we have all the necessary tools for us to build a humane, not only a human, but a humane society. We have all the necessary tools for us to describe, to give an adequate description of the physical world and to express it in rigorous mathematical language. We can do that. We need no God in order to do that. We, on the other hand, badly need some access to transcendence when the question is this really good? That there should be goods or goodies for man? Is the very existence of man on this earth a good thing or not? I'm afraid we can't answer such a question without, well, a reference outside of mankind. Otherwise, we'll do as Baron Munchausen did. It will pull ourselves out of the quagmire by pulling on our own wig, which is, well, rather difficult. Well, we have goods in plenty, but we can't say whether it is good that these goods have a beneficiary. Or we can, but in order to do that, we must believe in the one who said at the sixth day of his creation that in its entirety, whatever is very good. Thank you so much.